We're talking about the big questions we have after watching Justice League. I'm Lauren, and I'm joined by Andy Hartup.
Hello. Just a warning, there will be loads of spoilers in this video because we are going to be talking extensively about the Justice League movie. So the first question I really want to know is, what woke up the mother boxes? Those sort of weird loot crate things that were floating around. They sort of go into it a little bit and explain how, I think when Steppenwolf turns up, he says, it's a time when mankind was most fearful, so the boxes have activated because Superman's dead, or, well, he is dead. So I wonder if that was, I mean, that's just the sort of the vague reason they give for it, but the rest of it's never really explained, like, why now? Why specifically now?
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I didn't really think that's what Steppenwolf was saying. I thought he was saying that they called to him because Superman had died and the Earth was vulnerable, which I read to be a bit weird because obviously Superman hasn't been on Earth for the entire time that the mother boxes have been on Earth. So they could have just called to him, you know, like 50 years before Clark Kent even existed, and the Earth would have been just as vulnerable. But if you think it's because humanity had never known despair like they had until after Superman died, and that's what woke them up, that does maybe make a bit more sense, I suppose. They'd have to be like really, really upset though for that to be the first time that the Earth was that vulnerable in the thousands of years that they've been on Earth.
I mean, if it's to do with despair, you only have to look at, I mean, the world will have seen Batman versus Superman. I mean, there's no greater source of despair than that, is there?
No, I mean, it was pretty shocking, so maybe it was just the collective sadness over that movie in general that woke the mother boxes up and started the apocalypse.
In a sort of meta reference to itself.
Yeah.
I believe
that
movie
more.
woke up the mother boxes.
I believe that more than the storyline actually in the movie, so yeah.
Okay, so it's never really that well explained. The next question, which we'll skip ahead a bit actually, what do you think has happened to the mother boxes now? Because that's sort of not explained at the end either, is it? It's like, hey, we've separated these boxes, all good, see you later.
Yeah, it's a bit weird really, like these mother boxes are supposed to be really, really powerful, like apocalypse causing objects, and yet they turn up out of nowhere, they wake up out of nowhere, and then right at the end of the movie, after they're separated, they kind of just disappear. There's no kind of talk about how, oh, we need to separate them and take them to different parts of the world and bury them and hide them again forever or destroy them. Or, like, even, like, let's just put them in a truck so we know where they are. It's just, the League are just like, great job, they're separated, Steppenwolf is gone.
They did a fist bump.
They did a fist
Flash
bump.
And,
they were
Robot Man.
It's sloppy workmanship, really. It's sloppy workmanship because they feel like the job is done and it was far from done. They needed to collect those mother boxes up and put them somewhere safe.
I think that would have been the sensible thing to do. And do not call them Infinity Stones. Those are mother boxes right there. So the next question is, where were the billions of people who actually live on Earth during this whole movie?
That was a bit odd.
There was one
I know
Russian
there was
family.
that one guy, and his family.
The janitor.
Yeah. There was that one family we saw who I assume are the most important family on Earth.
The Russian one.
The Russian family,
Okay,
because they were the only ones featured in the whole movie.
What I loved about the end scene there is when Batman or Wonder Woman, I can't remember who it is, tells the Flash, you know, go save that family.
Yeah.
Or Superman turns up,
Batman,
and he specifically takes them a certain amount of distance and then leaves them.
Yeah.
Like from this thing that's spreading really quickly out from the nuclear power plant. How did he know how far to go and where to leave them? Like, did he just sort of say, oh, I'm a bit tired now, job done, I'll just leave you guys here? And the same, like, Superman was obviously a bit like, hey, I've got a building. But that just seemed a bit bizarre. Like, but I think we're being a bit silly about it, but it raises the point, like, Justice League suffers so badly because there's no humanity to it. And there's the general populace is nowhere to be seen, right?
Yeah, it is a bit odd, really, because a lot throughout the movie they kind of talk about the civilians. Oh, the civilians in danger. Like, this is supposed to be quite a big thing for Superman, and yet when we cut to those civilians, all we see is this one family. And movies do this. They focus in on individuals and individual families to give the audience a sense of humanity and of a relationship with them, but they genuinely try to pick more than one family, or more than just a handful of people, and this movie really just didn't have any. It was almost like there was just this one family living in the area which was affected, until Superman turned up with a building full of people that we'd never heard about or seen before.
We didn't see any of them in there. It's just a building, wasn't it? I reckon he just picked it up. There's no one in it.
In fact, when he said to the Flash, "Oh, you get them on the left and I'll get them on the right," I didn't know who he was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a distinct lack of humanity to the entire film, and I don't understand why that is. There's no sense of peril in that case, no sense of it being a big event. So it was just a very strange decision, which is why it's one of these questions like, where is everyone else? What was everyone else doing? And why weren't there more normal human beings in the movie?
Yeah, definitely. So another big question we have after watching the Justice League is, why did Superman turn evil and attack his friends after he was resurrected?
That was really tonally weird for me. Like, they sort of built it up by saying, "Oh, he's not going to be the same when he comes back," and there was Bruce Wayne going to he's saying, "Oh, have you got the big guns, Plan B?" And it was a bit like, "Ooh, what happens if he comes back and he's not the same because he was dead?" And all he did, it was ridiculous. They bring him back to life. He's really angry and furious and primal because he says he doesn't know who he is, but his first instinct is to attack all these people, and he knows all his powers. He's got all those, and then suddenly Alfred shows up with Lois Lane, and he says, "Oh, I fancy a bit of a cuddle." And they zoom off and stand in a cornfield, and suddenly he's having japes with her about Batman. He's going, "Oh yeah, I knew that guy would call on me." I mean, this was minutes or hours later. It just seems like he suddenly, he came back bad so that they could impose like a sense of, "Oh my God, Superman's back and he's different," and then they forget about it in almost the next scene.
Yeah, it's just they're not following through really on the things that have been planted there. Because I'm actually okay with the idea that Superman wouldn't come back and be the same, because let's be honest, like, you don't die and come back and everything's fine. Not normally. I say not normally. How many people do I know that have been resurrected? But I can understand that. I can understand the idea that he would be different. And remember, he didn't actually start attacking the other superheroes until Cyborg's technology kind of kicked in because it was under threat and started firing at him, and it was only at that point that he actually started attacking them. So it wasn't like he fired first, and I can imagine, waking up after being dead is really disorientating, and he probably needed a minute to adjust. And of course, like, Lois Lane is the one that brings him back. I mean, I don't know why that was Plan B. That should have been Plan A. The whole time I was listening to them talk about how they were worried he would come back different, I was like, I don't understand why you don't have the love of his life here, because that's clearly going to be the person that's going to make him remember who he is. So I'm kind of okay with the idea that he would have been disoriented and not necessarily evil, but not sure what was going on. But like you say, they didn't give it enough time to really follow that through, and it was kind of very quickly brushed to one side so that they could get on with the rest of the movie.
Airbrushed to one side like his tash. So the last question I have is about the post-credits scene, the second one, where first of all Lex Luthor's escaped from prison. How the hell does that happen? And we also see Deathstroke approaching him on the yacht, and he talks to him about setting up like an anti-Justice League, a dark Justice League. What do we think about that in terms of like the future of the franchise?
I mean, I think it's going to be quite popular. I could certainly tell in the screening we were in that it resonated with fans. It kind of depends how much they're going to follow this through or not, because now we've had a couple of movies in the DC Extended Universe which haven't performed incredibly well. So I don't know if we'll ever get to that planned, dark Justice League movie that they have set up. The Deathstroke character is a big one in the universe, and he was originally supposed to debut in the Batman movie, which isn't planned now. So we don't really know much about it at all, other than the fact that Lex Luthor's up to no good and is starting to put them all together. Yeah,
I think the idea of bringing Deathstroke back is really interesting. I know he's got his own movie planned, but I would also watch like an anti-Justice League movie where he's gathering his own team for nefarious ends. I think that would actually be quite bold. A lot of the other stuff that they've done has been very sort of, hey Marvel, look, we're doing the same things as you because we heard it was popular. We've got post-credit scenes and we've got our a big assembly thing. But I think it would be more original if they went like fully on board with it and did like a really like a proper movie about a villain super team that was really quite nasty and quite dark on its own merits.
Yeah.
I would totally watch that, and I think DC doesn't really lead the way in anything other than the fact that Wonder Woman is probably the strongest female superhero. And I think that'd be an area that they could easily expand into and like make themselves different.
Yeah, I mean, that was why the Suicide Squad movie was so popular originally, because people, they are really keen to see these villains, which are great characters, on the big screen and see them from their point of view. The only problem is how do you make people care about the bad guys, because at least with Suicide Squad, it was sort of because they were the underdogs and they were, being sacrificed. But, it isn't a great movie, and I just think, I'd be really curious to see, a dark Justice League movie, but I don't know how they're going to get audiences to care about these characters when they're, so evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point, but, DC have got to do something because they're, if Justice League proves anything, it's that imitating someone like Marvel just really isn't working.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for watching. If you've got any comments, leave them in the comments below, and check out Games Radar for more Justice League features